The whisper of small feet padding across hardwood woke Rachel at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before her alarm was set to go off. She kept her eyes closed, listening to the familiar sound of Mia navigating the hallway. The creak of the third floorboard fell. The soft bump against the doorframe that meant the 7-year-old was still half asleep. Then silence, the kind that meant Mia was standing in Rachel's doorway, waiting to see if she'd been heard. Rachel had learned in 3 months of emergency foster placement not to startle the child with sudden movements. Instead, she opened her eyes slowly, turning her head toward the door. Mia stood backlit by the hallway nightlight, her dark hair a wild tangle around thin shoulders. Her oversized pajamas hung off her small frames. "Bad dream?" Rachel asked softly. Mia shook her head, but her fingers twisted in the hem of her shirt. That was a tell Rachel had catalogued along with dozens of others. The child was afraid of something, just not ready to name it yet. "Can I sleep with you?" "Of course." Rachel lifted the blanket in invitation, and Mia crossed the room in 3 quick steps. She burrowed into the warmth with the desperate speed of someone who expected the offer to be rescinded. Rachel wrapped an arm around the small body, feeling the tension in Mia's muscles. She felt the way she held herself rigid even while seeking comfort. They lay in silence while the sky outside slowly lightened from black to gray. Rachel knew better than to push. Mia would talk when she was ready, or she wouldn't. Either way, Rachel's job was just to be present, to be safe, to be steady in a world that had shown this child nothing but instability for 7 years. "There's career day at school today," Mia said finally, her voice muffled against Rachel's shoulder. "Everyone's parents are supposed to come talk about their jobs." Rachel's heart sank. She'd forgotten the notice had come home 2 weeks ago, buried in Mia's backpack among crumpled worksheets and half-eaten granola bars. "I can come," she said quickly. "I can take the morning off, talk about being a social worker." "You're not my mom." The words were matter-of-fact, not accusatory, but they landed like stones. "Everyone knows you're just my foster person. And social work isn't cool like being a firefighter or a doctor. Tommy's dad is a pilot. Sarah's mom is on TV." Rachel bit back the automatic response about all jobs being important, about the value of social work. Mia didn't need a lecture on societal contributions. She needed what every 7-year-old needed and deserved. She needed to belong. To not be the kid whose parents didn't show up. Whose life was so fractured that even a simple school event became a reminder of everything she'd lost. "What if we skip it?" Rachel suggested. "We could go to the zoo instead, just the 2 of us." "No!" Mia's voice went hard. "I'm not skipping. I'm not going to be the kid who doesn't have anyone. She stopped, her small body trembling. "I'll figure something out." The determination in those words terrified Rachel more than the nightmares. It terrified her more than the hoarding of food or the flinching at sudden movements. Because that kind of determination in a 7-year-old meant Mia was planning some things. And in Rachel's experience, plans made by traumatized children rarely ended well. "Mia, talk to me, what are you thinking?" But the child had gone still, shut down the way she did when she felt exposed. "Nothing. Can we have pancakes for breakfast?" Rachel let it go, filing away the concern to revisit later. They got through the morning routine, pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse, careful braiding of Mia's hair, the daily search for matching socks that never seemed to exist. Rachel dressed in her usual work clothes, slacks, and a cardigan that had seen better days, comfortable shoes for the endless walking between home visits and court appearances. She tried not to think about career day, about Mia standing alone while other children's parents filled the classrooms. She dropped Mia at school with the usual reminders about listening to Mrs. Chen, about using her words when she felt upset, about remembering that Rachel would be there at 3:15 for pickup, always, no matter what. Mia hugged her with unusual fierceness, and Rachel felt the warning bells go off again. "I love you," Rachel said, the words she repeated multiple times a day even though Mia had never said them back. "Have a good day, sweetheart." "Bye, Rachel." Never mom, never any endearment, just the careful distance of a child who'd learned not to attach. Mia ran toward the school entrance without looking back, her backpack bouncing, her shoelaces already coming untied. Rachel sat in her car for a long moment, fighting the urge to follow Mia inside. To hover and protect, and somehow shield her from every hurt the world wanted to deliver. But that wasn't her job. Her job was to provide stability while the system worked to either reunify Mia with her biological mother or find a permanent placement. Her job was temporary, no matter how much she'd come to love this prickly, damaged, brilliant little girl in 3 short months. Her phone buzzed with a reminder about the home visit she had scheduled at 9. Rachel put the car in drive and headed back into her regular life. She pushed thoughts of career day into the corner of her mind reserved for problems she couldn't immediately solve. She didn't think about it again until 11:30, when her phone rang with the school's number.
Ms. Torres? Mrs. Chen's voice was carefully neutral.
Oh, we need you to come to the school. There's been an incident with Mia. Rachel's hands went cold. Is she hurt? No, nothing like that. She's fine, physically. But there's a situation we need to discuss in person. Can you come now? Rachel was already heading for her car. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The drive to Oakwood Elementary felt like it took hours, Rachel's mind spinning through possibilities. Mia had hit another kid. She'd done it once before when a boy had cornered her at recess. Mia had stolen something. Food insecurity made her hoard, made her take things she didn't need just to have them. Mia had run flight was her first response to stress, and Rachel had spent countless hours teaching her to use her words instead of her feet. But when Rachel rushed into the main office, heart pounding and apologies already forming, she found Mia sitting calmly in a chair beside a man who absolutely did not belong in an elementary school. He was in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Rachel's monthly mortgage payment. Dark hair silvered at the temples, broad shoulders, an air of controlled power that made everyone in the small office give him extra space. He sat with perfect posture, one hand resting on the arm of his chair, the other on his knee. His gray eyes tracked Rachel the moment she entered, with an intensity that made her breath catch. Mia sat beside him, her small hand tucked in his much larger one, looking more relaxed than Rachel had seen her in months.
Rachel!
Mia hopped up, pulling the man with her. This is Dmitri. He came for career day like I asked him to. Rachel stared at the child, then at the man, then at Mrs. Chen hovering in the doorway looking deeply uncomfortable. I'm sorry, what? Perhaps we should talk, Dmitri said, and his voice matched everything else about him. Deep, controlled, touched with an accent that suggested he'd learned English as a second language. Privately? Mrs. Chen gestured to the small conference room. You can use this space. Mia, sweetie, why don't you wait in my classroom? I have some books you can look at. But, Mia's fingers tightened on Dmitri's hand. It's all right, Yakaya. The endearment rolled off his tongue naturally. I'll be right there, 5 minutes. Mia looked between them, clearly torn, then nodded and followed Mrs. Chen out. The moment the door closed, Rachel turned on Dmitri. Who are you and why is my foster daughter holding your hand like you're her favorite person? My name is Dmitri Volkov. I own several businesses in the city, including the building where your school holds its career day presentations each year. He paused. And Mia approached me this morning and asked if I would pretend to be her father for the day. The words landed like a physical blow. Rachel sank into a chair, her mind reeling. She asked you, she what? She said her name was Mia Torres, that she was in foster care, and that all the other children had parents coming to talk about their jobs. She said she didn't want to be the only one without someone.
Dmitri's expression softened fractionally.
She asked if I would come to her classroom and pretend to be her father, just for today. Rachel pressed her hands against her eyes, torn between fury and heartbreak. So you, what? Just agreed? Do you have any idea how inappropriate? I know exactly how inappropriate it is. Dmitri's voice was quiet but firm. Which is why I asked to speak with her teacher first, to verify her story and ensure this wasn't. He paused, choosing words carefully. Ensure this was what it appeared to be, a child in need of help. And then you just went along with it? Rachel's voice rose despite her best efforts. You didn't think maybe you should call her foster mother first? Check with the school administrators? You just let a 7-year-old manipulate you into. I did it because she asked me to. The simplicity of the statement stopped Rachel's building tirade. Dmitri met her eyes directly.
Miss Torres, I understand your anger.
But that little girl looked at me with more hope than I've seen in years and asked for one thing: to not be singled out, to not be different, to have someone stand up in front of her class and make her feel like she belonged. How could I say no to that? Rachel wanted to argue, wanted to explain all the reasons this was wrong: stranger danger, appropriate boundaries, the trauma of attachment and loss. But she thought about Mia's face that morning, about the desperate determination in her voice when she'd said she'd figure something out. What did you tell her class? Rachel asked finally. That I work in commercial real estate and property management. That I immigrated to this country 25 years ago with nothing. That I built my business from the ground up. That my daughter? He stopped, something painful flickering across his features. That Mia makes me proud every day. She's not your daughter. No, Dimitri's voice went soft. But for an hour this morning, in front of her classmates, she was.
And Miss Torres, you should have seen her face.
With him. The way she sat up straight, the way she smiled when her friends asked questions. For 1 hour, she wasn't the foster kid. She was just Mia, whose father came to career day like everyone else's parents. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back angrily, frustrated with herself for being moved by this stranger's words, by his actions, by the way he'd given Mia something Rachel herself couldn't provide, the appearance of a complete family.
This can't happen again, she said firmly.
Mia has attachment issues. She doesn't need. I know about attachment issues, Dmitri cut her off gently. I know what it's like to lose everything, to be alone in a country where nobody knows you or cares if you live or die. I know what it means to be hungry not just for food but for belonging. He leaned forward slightly. Miss Torres, I'm not trying to replace you or confuse your daughter. But I would like, with your permission, to stay in touch with Mia. To perhaps be a positive male figure in her life, if you'll allow it.
Every professional instinct Rachel had screamed warnings.
This man was a stranger. She knew nothing about him except that he wore expensive suits and owned buildings and had an accent that suggested the kind of background that might not survive a thorough check. Letting him into Mia's life was asking for complications, for heartbreak, when he inevitably disappeared the way everyone in Mia's life eventually did. But she thought about Mia's hand in his, about the way the child had relaxed in his presence. About the smile Mrs. Chen had mentioned seeing during the career day presentation. What I need to do, and I'll do it. I need to do a background check, Rachel said finally. And you'll need to go through the proper channels, the agency, the courts. Foster care isn't, you can't just decide to be involved. There are rules. I understand rules. Something in Dimitri's expression suggested he understood them well enough to work around them when necessary. But Rachel decided not to pursue that line of thought. Tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. They talked for another 20 minutes. Rachel explained the Byzantine process of becoming an approved mentor through the foster system. Dmitri asked careful questions about Mia's background and needs. He never pushed, never demanded, just listened with an intensity that made Rachel wonder what kind of businesses he actually ran that required this level of focused attention. When they finally emerged from the conference room, Mia looked up from her book with an expression so hopeful it hurt to see. Are you mad? She asked Rachel, her small voice careful. Rachel knelt in front of her, brushing hair from the child's face. I'm not mad, sweetheart. I wish you'd talk to me about this. We could have figured something out together. You would have said no. Mia's accuracy was uncomfortable. Maybe. Rachel glanced at Dmitri, who was watching them with an unreadable expression. But Mr. Volkov and I talked, and if you want, he might be able to visit you sometimes. Like a mentor. Would you like that? Mia's face transformed, the careful guardedness dropping away to reveal pure joy. Really? He can come see me? If he passes the background check and gets approved by the agency. Rachel added the caveat, even though she knew it would mean nothing to Mia. It might take a few weeks. I'll wait. Mia turned to Dmitri. You'll come back? I'll come back. He said it like a promise, like a vow, and something in his certainty made Rachel believe him. I'll see you soon, damdagiye. Rachel drove Mia back to school for the afternoon session, fielding the child's excited chatter about career day. About how Tommy had said his pilot dad wasn't as cool as Mia's real estate dad. About how Sarah had asked if Dmitri could come back for the next school event. Rachel made appropriate noises, already mentally composing the explanation she'd need to give her supervisor. The paperwork she'd need to file, the complications this was going to create in an already complicated placement. But she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Not when Mia was smiling like this, when the careful walls she'd built were showing cracks that might, eventually, let love in. Rachel didn't expect to hear from Dmitri again. Men like him, wealthy, powerful, busy, didn't follow through on impulse promises to foster kids. She prepared herself to comfort Mia when the visits didn't materialize, added it to the list of disappointments the child would need to process in therapy. But 3 days later, a courier delivered a package to Rachel's door. Inside was a perfectly completed application for the mentor program, including background check authorizations, professional references, and a cover letter explaining Dmitri's interest in working with children in foster care. There was also a separate note, handwritten on expensive stationery.
Miss Torres, thank you for giving me the chance to know Mia.
I understand the process will take time and I'll wait as long as necessary. In the meantime, I've arranged for some books Mia mentioned liking to be delivered to your address. I hope this is appropriate, Dmitri Volkov. The books arrived that afternoon, a complete set of a fantasy series Mia had mentioned once in passing during their brief conversation, plus several others Rachel recognized as classics for young readers. The gift was thoughtful without being excessive, exactly calibrated to show attention without overwhelming. Rachel called the number on his application that evening after Mia was in bed. Dmitri Volkov. He answered on the second ring, his voice formal, professional. This is Rachel Torres. I received your application and the books. You didn't need to. I wanted to. A pause, and then softer. How is she? Rachel found herself smiling despite her intentions to keep this professional. She's good, excited. She keeps asking when you're coming to visit. Tell her I'm working on it. There was warmth in his voice now, genuine affection. Tell her to be patient. They talked for 15 minutes. Rachel explaining more about Mia's background. The mother with addiction issues, the series of failed reunification attempts, the likelihood that parental rights would eventually be terminated. Dmitri listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions, and Rachel found herself relaxing into the conversation in a way she hadn't expected. You're good with her, Rachel said finally. At the school. Mrs. Chen said Mia was like a different child when you were there. She reminds me of someone, Steam. Dmitri's voice had gone distant. Someone I couldn't help, many years ago. Perhaps this is my chance to do better. Rachel wanted to ask who, wanted to understand what drove this man to care about a random foster child he'd met at a school career day. But some instinct told her to wait, that the story would come when he was ready to share it. The background check should take 2 weeks, Rachel said instead. And then there's an orientation session, paperwork, matching process. If everything goes smoothly, you could have your first visit in about a month. I'll clear my schedule. Said with the confidence of someone who controlled his own time, who could rearrange the world to fit his priorities. They ended the call with mutual assurances to stay in touch. Rachel sat in her quiet living room wondering what exactly she'd just set in motion. The background check came back clean, surprisingly clean for someone who owned as many businesses as Dmitri claimed. Either he was exactly what he appeared to be, or he was very good at hiding whatever shadows lived in his past. Rachel chose to believe the former, mostly because the alternative meant confronting the fact that she was letting a potentially dangerous man into Mia's life. The orientation session came and went. Dmitri sat through 3 hours of training on trauma-informed care, with the same focused attention he'd brought to their initial meeting. Rachel watched him from across the room. He was the only man in a class of 12. The only one wearing a suit that cost more than everyone else's clothes combined, and yet he fit in seamlessly. He asked intelligent questions, took notes, nodded thoughtfully when the instructor discussed the impact of childhood trauma on brain development. During the break, he approached Rachel with 2 cups of coffee. "You take it black, yes?" He handed her one. "I've been paying attention." "Thank you." Rachel accepted the cup, hyper-aware of the other participants watching them with interest. "You didn't have to come to this. The orientation isn't mandatory for mentors. I want to do this right." Dmitri sipped his own coffee. "Mia deserves someone who knows what they're doing, who understands what she's been through. I want to be that person." "Can I ask you something?" Rachel lowered her voice. "That day at the school? Why did you really say yes to Mia? The truth?" Dmitri was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "I had a daughter once," he said finally. "Natasha. She died when she was 8 years old, cancer. And in those last months when she was sick and scared, all she wanted was to feel normal. To go to school, to play with friends, to not be the sick kid everyone pitied." His voice roughened. "The day before she died, her school had a father-daughter dance. She was too weak to go, could barely stay awake for more than an hour. Oh, but she asked me, begged me, to dance with her. So I carried her around her hospital room while music played from my phone, and she smiled. She was in pain, dying, and she smiled because for 3 minutes she wasn't sick. She was just my daughter at a dance." Rachel's throat closed with unshed tears. "Dmitri, I'm so sorry. When Mia asked me to pretend to be her father, all I could see was Natasha. Another little girl who just wanted to be normal, to belong, to have what the other children had. How could I say no?" He looked at Rachel directly. "I'm not trying to replace you or confuse your daughter. I'm not trying to adopt her or take her away. I just want to give her some of what I couldn't give my daughter. More time. More joy. More moments of feeling like she belongs." Rachel understood then, in a way she hadn't before, what drove this man. Not guilt exactly, but the bone-deep need to transmute grief into something meaningful. To take the love that had nowhere to go and pour it into another child who desperately needed it. "Mia's lucky to have you," Rachel said quietly. "I'm the lucky one." Dmitri's smile was sad, distant. "She's giving me a second chance." The first official visit was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon, 2 hours at a local park, with Rachel present as supervisor. Mia had been vibrating with excitement all morning, changing her outfit 3 times, checking the clock every 5 minutes. When Dmitri's car pulled up at exactly 2 p.m., she bolted for the door before Rachel could stop her. "Mia, wait for me!" Rachel grabbed her keys and bag, rushing after the child who was already halfway down the front walk. Dmitri climbed out of the car, not the expensive suit this time, but jeans and a casual jacket that somehow still looked expensive. He knelt when Mia reached him, letting the child crash into him with the force of her enthusiasm. "Hello, Jacketchia, I missed you." "I missed you too." Mia pulled back, her face shining. "Can we feed the ducks?" "Rachel says there's a pond with ducks and we can bring bread." "Mia, breathe." Rachel caught up, slightly winded. "Let Mr. Volkov say hello first." "Dmitri, please." He stood, offering Rachel his hand. "Mr. Volkov makes me feel old." His hand was warm, solid, and Rachel found herself holding on a moment too long before pulling away. "Right, Dmitri, should we head to the park?" They spent 2 hours that felt like minutes, watching Mia run and play and slowly relax into the joy of having 2 adults focused entirely on her. Dmitri pushed her on the swings, helped her across the monkey bars. He listened with apparent fascination to her detailed explanation of the social dynamics of her second-grade class. He was patient, attentive, and completely uninterested in his phone despite it buzzing repeatedly in his pocket. Rachel watched them together and felt something unfurled in her chest. Something dangerous and complicated that she'd been trying to ignore since that first meeting at the school. Because Dmitri wasn't just good with Mia. He was good, period. Kind and thoughtful and genuinely interested in this child's well-being. And the way he looked at Rachel sometimes, when Mia wasn't paying attention, like she was someone worth seeing, worth knowing, made her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with professional boundaries. "You're staring," Dmitri said, appearing beside her while Mia played on the climbing structure.
Rachel jerked, embarrassed at being caught.
"I'm supervising." "You're staring." But his tone was amused, not accusatory.
"I hope that means you approve?"
Rachel searched for words. "You're really good with her. It's clear you meant what you said about wanting to be here." "I don't say things I don't mean." Dmitri watched Mia scale to the top of the structure, his body tense until she reached the platform safely. "She's a special child, your Mia. Strong and scared in equal measure. She reminds me so much of..." He stopped, the unspoken name hanging between them. "You can talk about Natasha," Rachel said gently. "I imagine you don't get many chances to." "No." The word was soft, grateful. "My wife left after Natasha died. The grief it destroyed us. Destroyed her. She couldn't look at me without seeing our daughter, couldn't stay in the house we'd built as a family. I tried to hold on, but..." He shook his head. "Some things can't be fixed, only survived." "I'm sorry." Rachel wanted to touch him, to offer comfort, but kept her hands in her pockets. "It was hell." Dmitri's jaw worked. "For years I threw myself into work. Made money, built an empire, filled every hour so I wouldn't have to think or feel or remember. And then Mia asked me to pretend to be her father and suddenly..." He looked at Rachel. "Suddenly I remembered why any of it mattered. Why I keep going. And then I met you and suddenly..." He looked at Rachel. "Suddenly I remembered why life is worth living. Why fighting is worth it. Why holding on matters." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Mia play. Rachel felt the shift between them, from professional acquaintances to something more. Something that probably violated a dozen agency policies and her own personal rules about maintaining boundaries. But she couldn't bring herself to care. Not when Dmitri looked at her like that, like she was solving a puzzle he'd been trying to work out for years. The visit ended too soon, Mia dragging her feet as they walked back to Rachel's house.
"When can Dmitri come again?" she asked for the third time.
"Soon, sweetheart." Rachel unlocked the front door. "We'll set up another visit next week. Promise?" "I promise." Rachel looked at Dmitri over Mia's head, saw his small nod of confirmation. After Mia went inside to wash up for dinner, Dmitri lingered on the porch. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For today, for trusting me with her. Thank you for showing up."
Rachel meant it in more ways than one.
"Not everyone would have. I meant what I said at the school. I'll keep showing up, as long as you'll let me." He paused, then added carefully, "And not just for Mia. I'd like to, if you're interested, perhaps we could have coffee sometime. Without a 7-year-old chaperone?" Rachel's heart kicked into overdrive. This was a terrible idea. She was Mia's foster mother, he was becoming Mia's mentor, they absolutely should not complicate this arrangement with personal feelings. But she thought about the way he'd looked at her today, about the gentleness in his hands when he'd pushed Mia on the swing, about the grief he carried with such dignity. "Yes," she said, throwing caution to the wind. "I'd like that." His smile was brilliant, transforming his face. "Friday evening? There's a restaurant I think you'd like." "Friday works." After he left, Rachel leaned against the closed door and wondered what exactly she'd just agreed to. Dating Mia's mentor was probably grounds for investigation, definitely grounds for gossip, and almost certainly a terrible idea that would end in complications. But for the first time since she'd started foster care 3 years ago, she felt something other than tired and worried and alone. She felt hope, and that was worth protecting. The coffee date became dinner. Dinner became a walk through the city where Dmitri pointed out buildings he owned, restaurants he frequented, the bench where he'd sat after his daughter's funeral and decided to keep living. Rachel told him about her own losses, parents who'd died young, a fiancé who'd left when she'd chosen foster care over starting their own family. Years of wondering if she'd made the right choices. You made the right choices, Dmitri said with certainty. You give so much of yourself. Sometimes I wonder if it's enough. The admission came easily in the dark. I love her, but I'm not her mother. I'm temporary. And someday, she'll either go back to her bio mom or get adopted by someone else, and I'll be alone again. Doing this all over with another child who needs me temporarily. Then don't be temporary. Dmitri stopped walking, turning to face her. Adopt her yourself. Give her the permanent home she needs. Rachel laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's not that simple. Single foster parents don't usually get priority in adoption. The system wants two-parent families, stability, resources. You have all of that. Dmitri's voice was firm. You're stable, loving, committed. And resources. He paused. If money is the issue, I can help. I can't take your money. Why not? I have more than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Why shouldn't it go to keeping Mia safe and happy? He moved closer. Rachel, I know we've only known each other a few weeks, but I care about both of you. Deeply. And I want to help however I can. Rachel looked up at him, this complicated man with his grief and his gentleness and his dangerous intensity. This is moving fast. Yes. He didn't deny it. But when you've already lost everything that matters, when you've survived the worst grief can do to you, you learn not to waste time. You learn that when something good comes along, you hold on tight. And I'm something good? Rachel's voice came out smaller than intended. You're everything good. Dmitri cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. You and Mia both. You're giving me a reason to be more than just the man who survived his daughter's death. You're giving me a purpose again. He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. Rachel melted into it, letting go of all the logical reasons this was a bad idea in favor of the way his arms felt around her. The way his lips moved against hers like she was precious and fragile and worth protecting. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dmitri rested his forehead against hers. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Tell me you feel it too. I feel it. Rachel's hands fisted in his jacket. I'm terrified, and it's complicated, and probably a disaster waiting to happen, but I feel it. Then we'll figure out the complications together. Said with the confidence of someone who'd built an empire from nothing, who believed obstacles were just problems waiting to be solved. They walked back to Rachel's house hand in hand. When Mia peeked out the window at the sound of voices, her face lit up with a joy so pure it hurt to see. Because somehow, impossibly, they were becoming what the child needed most, a family. The complications came 2 weeks later, delivered by a social worker Rachel didn't know. Mia's biological mother has completed her latest treatment program, the woman said, sitting in Rachel's living room with a file folder that contained Mia's entire painful history. She's requesting supervised visitation with the goal of eventual reunification. Rachel felt the ground drop out from under her. When? First visit is scheduled for next week. If it goes well, we'll increase frequency and duration. The social worker's expression was sympathetic, but firm. I know this is hard, Miss Torres, but the goal of foster care has always been reunification when possible. Michelle Torres has worked hard to get sober. She deserves a chance to rebuild her relationship with her daughter. After the social worker left, Rachel sat in the quiet house and tried not to cry. Mia was at school, unaware that her world was about to shift again. Rachel would have to tell her tonight, would have to explain that the mother who'd chosen drugs over her daughter for 7 years suddenly wanted to play parent again. She called Dmitri without thinking, her voice breaking on the first word. What's wrong? He was all focused intensity immediately. Rachel, talk to me. She explained about the visitation, about the possibility of losing Mia, about how powerless she felt to stop it. Dmitri listened in silence, and Rachel could almost feel him thinking, calculating, planning. This Michelle Torres, he said finally. She's completed treatment. How many times? 5. Rachel's voice was hollow. She's relapsed after every program, every time Mia started to settle into her care. This will be the 6th attempt. And the courts keep giving her chances. Not a question. She's the biological mother. The system is built on the belief that children belong with their parents whenever possible.
Rachel scrubbed at her eyes angrily.
Even when those parents have proven over and over that they can't, that they won't put their children first. I'm coming over. Dmitri's voice brooked no argument. We need to talk about this, make a plan. You're not facing this alone. He arrived 30 minutes later, pulling Rachel into his arms the moment she opened the door. She buried her face in his chest and let herself break down, all the fear and grief and helpless rage pouring out in ugly sobs. Dmitri held her through it, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soft reassurances in Russian that she didn't understand but found comforting anyway. We'll fight this, he said when she'd finally cried herself out. If Michelle Torres is unstable, if there's any evidence she's not truly ready, we'll fight it. With what? Rachel pulled back, wiping her face. I'm just the foster mother. I don't have any legal standing. Then we'll get you legal standing. Dmitri's jaw was set, determined. Rachel, I need to tell you something about myself. About who I really am. Rachel's stomach dropped. What do you mean? I told you I own businesses. That's true. But it's not the whole truth. He drew a breath. I'm Bratva. Russian organized crime. I have connections, resources, the ability to make things happen that ordinary people can't. And I'm offering all of it to protect Mia. Rachel should have been shocked. Should have been horrified, should have told him to leave, should have called her supervisor and reported this immediately. But all she felt was a fierce, desperate gratitude. What are you proposing? She asked quietly. That we make sure Michelle Torres fails this time. Not through anything illegal, he added quickly. Just observation. Documentation. If she's using again, if she's unstable, if there's any evidence she's not ready, we'll make sure the courts see it. And we'll push for termination of parental rights, with you as Mia's adoptive parent. They won't let me adopt as a single parent. Oh. Then don't be single. Dmitri took her hands. Rachel, I know this is fast. I know we've only been together a few weeks. Oh. But I love you. I love Mia. And I want to build a family with both of you. Marry me. Let me help you adopt her. Let me give both of you the stability and protection you deserve. Rachel stared at him, her mind reeling. You're proposing? Yes. After 3 weeks. After a lifetime of knowing what matters. Dmitri's voice was steady, certain. I loved my daughter. I lost her. I spent years believing I'd never care about anything that deeply again. And then I met Mia, and I met you, and suddenly I remember why life is worth living. Why fighting is worth it. Why holding on matters. He squeezed her hands gently. I'm not asking you to say yes right now. I'm just asking you to think about it. To consider that maybe, impossibly, we've found exactly what we all need.
Rachel thought about Mia's face when Dmitri visited.
About the way the child had started calling him the me in quiet moments when she thought no one was listening. Thought about the way Dmitri had shown up consistently, had proven through action that his promises meant something. Thought about the way she felt when he looked at her, safe, seen, valued in ways she'd never experienced. Okay, she whispered. Yes. I'll marry you. The joy on his face was worth every risk, every complication. He pulled her close and kissed her like she was a miracle, like she'd just given him the world. They told Mia together that evening, both of them nervous despite their certainty. Mia listened to the explanation about her mother's visitation with growing fear. But when they got to the part about Dmitri and Rachel getting married, about all of them becoming a real family, her face transformed. You mean forever? She asked, her voice small and hopeful. Not just foster anymore? Real forever? Real forever, Rachel confirmed. If that's what you want. Mia launched herself at both of them, wrapping her small arms around as much of them as she could reach. I want it. I want you both. Forever. They held her while she cried happy tears. Rachel felt the pieces of her broken heart finally start to mend. Because this impossible, complicated, beautiful family they were building was exactly what she'd always wanted, and she'd fight with everything she had to protect it. The visitation with Michelle Torres happened on schedule. Dmitri had investigators watching the woman's apartment, documenting her associates, her routines, looking for any sign of relapse. They found it 3 days before the first visit. Michelle meeting with a known dealer, money exchanging hands, the subtle signs of someone already using again. Dmitri brought the evidence to Rachel's lawyer, one he'd hired and paid for, one of the best family law attorneys in the state. They filed an emergency motion to suspend visitation pending drug testing. The court ordered testing. Michelle failed. Parental rights were terminated 6 weeks later. Rachel and Dmitri got married in a small ceremony with Mia as their flower girl, beaming in a white dress that made her look like the princess she deserved to be. And 3 months after that, the adoption was finalized, Mia Torres officially becoming Mia Volkov, daughter of Dmitri and Rachel Volkov, with all the permanency and love and protection that name carried. On the night they brought her home from court with her adoption certificate, Mia crawled into their bed and looked at them with eyes full of wonder. Can you pretend to be my dad today? She asked Dmitri, echoing that first request that had started everything. No, Dmitri said gently, pulling her close. I can't pretend anymore, Kaklia. I am your father.
For real. Forever.
And Mia smiled. The real smile. The one Rachel had spent 3 months praying to see. She said the word she'd been holding back, saving for when she felt safe enough to believe it. Okay, Papa. I love you. I love you too, daughter. Always. Rachel watched them together, this impossible family they'd built from grief and hope and the courage to believe in second chances, and felt her own tears fall. They'd all asked for pretend. They'd all gotten real instead. And it was better than any of them had imagined.